talking about SNL, the history, the mysteries, and all the hot impressions in between, breaking down all the numbers as well. In your favorite sketches with special guests, it's on the Saturday Night Network.
Yes, welcome on in, everybody, to the Saturday Night Network for another edition of our Monday Night Roundtable, coming to you just a couple of days after the Walton Goggins and Arcade Fire episode of Saturday Night Live, Season 50, Episode 19, the penultimate episode of the season. My name is Jon Schneider from the SNN. So excited to be back here with you as a presentation of LateNighter.com and with a great group of panelists to break down this episode, the final episode with a rookie host for the season. A lot of interesting storylines. We get to see a former cast member come back. So a lot to dive into here tonight. Hope you can join us in the live chat where we will take a look at your comments and involve them in the conversation as well. So looking forward to all of this. Halle Dowden-Parrott is our first panelist I'm going to bring in tonight. Halle, how are you?
I'm doing good, John. I can't believe we're in the home stretch of season 50. And I'm excited to be here to talk about the penultimate episode. As you said, we're wrapping it up here soon. So I'm glad I got to squeeze another one in and talk about Walton Goggins. It was crazy.
Yeah, it does feel like the longest season ever, but it is fun when we get to this point because there's a lot of things to look forward to next week as well. So we will talk about that towards the end of the show as we do our first look into the finale of season 50. And I cannot wait to continue talking to this guy about this season. I can't believe, Sammy, that we're almost wrapping up our 5th season covering SNL together. Sammy is here. How are you?
John, I'm doing well. Yeah, it's crazy. You know, we've been counting down to this season for so long, and now we're almost at the end. So it's been exciting. It's been awesome to break it down all season long. And yeah, this week has been interesting for me as well because, I was at a wedding on Saturday night, so I didn't get to watch live. So it's always interesting to sort of kind of get things spoiled for you and then kind of watch SNL, on Sunday morning with like sort of a different sort of perspective, kind of, seeing what people are talking about online. So I'm excited to dive into all this.
Yes, that is what I call the wrong way to watch SNL, but it's okay. You had a wedding. I understand.
I agree.
Joining us, last but not least, is the incredible Zoe Walker is here. Zoe, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm excited to be here. I feel like it's been such a long season, but I'm sad it's ending. 50 is so special. I don't know how 51 will ever be as special.
We're gonna try. I mean, there's a lot of things to look forward to. Even if it doesn't have that big, sexy, 50 number, SNL 1000 around the corner. So only 12 episodes away from that, I believe. NBC today announced at their upfronts that they're going to be doing a variety special for their 100th anniversary. Halle, did I say that correctly?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, Tina and Amy were there, so that's always exciting to announce that. And then looking forward to whatever is going to be. If you weren't around or have never seen, back in 2002, NBC celebrated its 75th anniversary. This is right before Will Ferrell and Anna Gasteyer left the show, and they were a big part of that one, along with Jimmy Fallon, Tina Fey, and a bunch of SNL alumni. Marty Short was there. It was just a really fun party. So that's something to look forward to, of course, in season 51, and a lot of great storylines as we wrap up the season, head towards the summer, and look towards the next. But tonight, we are here to talk about Walton Goggins hosting the show for the first time. Had a huge 2025, one of the biggest names around, sort of became that sex symbol that you heard him talk about in the monologue as he portrayed 2 very different characters. We got Rick on the White Lotus, as he spoke about in the monologue. We got his character in the Righteous Gemstones, all the baby Billy. So, it makes sense that you're going to be booking him for SNL. So, Halle, when you heard that it was announced that Walton was going to come to the show, what were your thoughts?
I had, I think, a kind of unique perspective on this because I was the sole one of my friends that committed the pop culture sin of not watching The White Lotus. I know, terrible.
Too bad.
I'm bad and terrible. I'll get to it one day. But even then, just the bits and pieces I had seen of Walton Goggins here and there, prior to them even announcing him, I was like, this feels like a guy who could be a host in the last few weeks of the season. Going into it, he had that kind of energy that I love in a host, which is like, this is a guy who's probably willing to do some weird stuff and really commit to it, which, as I talked about in the Jack Black hot take show, those are my favorite kinds of hosts, ones that are just going to commit to some really weird and insane bits. And I feel like we saw a good amount of that. So despite the fact that I was not too familiar with Walton Goggins, I had faith in him as a host from the get-go, from before the get-go even. So I was pretty excited to see how it would pan out.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think what I always like in an SNL host is to bring that swagger to a role where you have the confidence to be able to pull anything off, but also be able to make fun of yourself. And I think that Walton can bring that weird to Saturday Night Live. So expectations for me were pretty high, Sammy. What were they for you when it was announced that he was coming to the show?
Yeah, I've been a fan of Walton Goggins probably since he guest starred on Community back in the day. He's in such a great episode of that show where it kind of has an SNL connection because it's where the Chevy Chase character is killed off and they're all kind of going through his will, and he plays like so well off of the cast in that. And obviously since then he's been in Vice Principals and Righteous Gemstones with Dan McBride. So as far as like comedy chops, I definitely knew that this is somebody that could deliver as far as like in a live setting. You never know if that's going to translate over, but he's also in the mold of like so many great sort of character actors that I feel like have hosted the show in the past, like a Steve Buscemi or like a J.K. Simmons or even like a Christopher Walken, like these guys who have such like an interesting, look to them and sort of a unique flavor. So I feel like a lot of times those can be very successful hosts of SNL. So it is interesting going back to the White Lotus of it all to see who they decided this season to be like the White Lotus host. I mean, obviously, I think Parker Posey was somebody as well that people would have been very excited to see. But I'm glad that we got Walton for an episode before the season was over.
Yeah, I also thought Parker may have been the choice. I know that Parker's pretty good friends with Fallon and was hanging around the SNL streets like in the early 2000s, so it sort of makes sense. But the Parker Posey story on the White Lotus may continue down the road, and that may be a case to bring her in. An interesting White Lotus note is that SNL was going to book Jennifer Coolidge to host the show at the end of season 48 before the writer's strike. And I wonder if this time they were like, well, we have to hit on somebody from the show to have them in the books. And obviously they do go with Walton Goggins. Zoe, what were your thoughts when you found out that he was going to come and host the show?
I was excited because I'm always excited about an episode of SNL. I watched The White Lotus and I was deeply invested in the speculation of him and Amy Lee Wood and everything going on there. So I was excited, but if I would have chosen someone from this cast of White Lotus, it would not have been him, but it made sense with the Righteous Gemstones and everything, kind of killing two birds with one stone. And then just the bits I've seen of him on the Righteous Gemstones, I knew that he was like ready to do some pretty zany and wacky stuff. So I thought it was going to be a good episode.
Yeah, that's a good point about Amy Lou Wood. I mean, obviously, that was what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. If you don't remember, she was portrayed by Sarah Sherman in The White POTUS and then wrote online about how upset she was with the portrayal. Sarah ends up sending her flowers and then a lot of media publicity about, did SNL go too far in the way they made fun of her? And, she has, her storylines intertwined with Walton Goggins' character on The White Lotus. And then I think there's, I don't know the details of all the drama with, who follows who on Instagram and all this stuff, but it was, a very, very big deal for a lot of people. And then, it sort of came with a little bit of a whimper on Saturday where there was no mention, no alluding to, and definitely no sight of Amy Lou Wood, though we did see her at the Met Gala on Monday. So Halle, do you think they missed an opportunity here not bringing Amy Lou Wood into the show, or at least trying to?
I think it would have been really interesting to see how they could have incorporated that. And I really feel like they could have made it funny. I think I remember seeing that she made a statement this week being like, people read too much into it, the Instagram following situation. So it seems like maybe there could have been a window there. But I also feel like that would have just taken so much attention away from the content of the episode itself, since her portrayal in The White POTUS became such a big media frenzy a few weeks ago. I'm certain that it would have been the same, which isn't a bad thing. But it's kind of nice to have him be able to just like have his episode and keep it separate from that kind of controversy and let it stand on its own, I think.
Sammy, what do you think? Did they make the right call here with just letting the situation die out?
Yeah, I do wonder if it's a timing thing, like because that was in the sort of last run of the Jack Black, John Hamm episodes that story really, caught fire. And now we're on the second episode in this run ending the season. Maybe they felt like, they didn't need to necessarily address it, that it's kind of been out of the news cycle. I do think if it was a situation where it was like, the first episode in a run and then, SNL has like a week to sort of address it themselves, I think they would have really taken the opportunity there and done it, especially if you had somebody from that show in the building. So I do feel like sometimes it's just a timing thing. And I think in general with other pop culture stuff on SNL, they sometimes, could be either the first people to comment on something or the last people, depending on, where they're at in the news cycle. So I imagine this is sort of the case where maybe, just enough time had passed where they didn't feel like they had to this time.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, let's talk about the cold open that we saw here this week, where we saw a Mother's Day cold open the show. And I, mentioned on Saturday, I was a little bit surprised because it seems like it's not something that they do every single year, but we do get 3 of the moms. We get Bowen, Keenan, and Marcelo's moms show up there. And it looked like to be a very sentimental cold open that we would see, but it is ultimately interrupted by the trope that we've seen all of the second half of season 50, where we're going to get James directly to camera, playing Trump, who is basically, in every aspect of our lives. And he's going to talk through, all of the stories of the week, including the election of the new Pope and some meta moments where he references the Bill Swirsky's superfans.
Like da bears, but da prayers.
And I'll have fun with that. And eventually it will lead to a fascinating moment from an SNL fan's perspective. Everyone's very excited to see Cecily Strong, beloved SNL cast member, is on for so many years. We got to see her at the 50th. Very pregnant. She's since had her baby, and it's so great to see her in the building. But to me, this real story of this is twofold. One, that this is the first time we're really seeing her on a regular SNL episode since a infamous moment occurred off screen in season 49, where she was actually cast in an anti-Semitism college campus cold open during the Adam Driver episode, and then was between dress and air removed from that role by her choice, is my understanding. And then Chloe Trost ends up taking that role and gets a ton of criticism for taking the role. And it becomes sort of this big thing that people have been talking about as to maybe a reason why Chloe Trost isn't on the cast in season 50. So that was a big factor there, because Colin Jost actually wrote that sketch back last season. And, Cecily deciding not to be in it was interesting because we had seen how close Cecily and Colin were. Anyways, it seems like it's a long time later. All, bygones be bygones. But, as we're sort of thinking about could Colin Jost be leaving the show, we have this really nice moment where we're going to get Colin as Pete Hegseth and Cecily return as Janine Pirro, spitting, drinks into his mouth to sort of have this a part of his goodbye potentially to SNL. Was a really nice full circle moment, given that, when Colin started at the show, he did Weekend Update with her, and they had this incredible friendship throughout her many years as a cast member. So a lot to think about there with this fascinating cold open. Zoe, I want to start with you. I want to ask you what you thought of everything that we saw to open the show on Saturday.
Well, I was excited to see their moms, and then I Googled it, and it's not their real moms. I compared the photos. But I love Mother's Day. I love moms. I was excited to see their moms. I thought that would be fun. And then I thought it was clever when they switched it and they had Trump come out. And of course, I was happy to see Cecily. It was so nice to see her for the 50th, and it was so exciting to see her again. And I thought she played well with JAJ, and it was fun to see Colin out, not trapped behind the desk, but he wasn't like the standout part of that, but the gag was funny when she was spitting into his mouth. But I really did appreciate seeing Cecily, and I thought that the switch having Trump come in was better, because I usually don't like political cold open so much.
Yeah, it was nice to have that other aspect where it wasn't a whole thing. Like at first I was actually concerned that it was going to be Cecily and James the whole time, and the whole thing was going to be her spitting at the Trump character. But I think bringing Colin into this added a nice layer to it. Halle, how did you feel about the cold open?
I am a very sentimental SNL watcher. Everything is sweet and perfect and awesome when there's like a former cast member coming back or like kind of re-showing a bond between two cast members that haven't been on together in a while. So I loved it from that perspective. In the same world of being a sentimental SNL watcher, I at the beginning was like, oh, yay, another mom's thing. I'll cry. It'll be adorable. How sweet. And then I was like, okay, of course, why didn't I think that they were going to switch it up and have Trump? I should know better at this point. But I just really, really loved seeing Cecily back, first and foremost. That on its own warmed my little SNL heart. But to see Cecily and Colin back, especially since he was such a big part of her goodbye on SNL, it did feel reminiscent of that. So it was a little bit of a mixed emotion thing there. But I honestly, when I look back at this cold open, I do look at it in like a sentimental way rather than being like, this aspect was funny. This aspect was funny. It was generally funny, but I did just love seeing that bond between Cecily and Colin again. And seeing Colin in a cold open that wasn't like a large cast cold open feels pretty rare. So I liked that it was just different and sweet, kind of, Trump aside. So that's my angle on it.
You know, I compare this on Saturday to a little bit of a retirement tour. And that's something that we see a lot in pro sports where someone says, this is my last year that I'm going to be playing the game. And they'll go to every stadium and they'll get some sort of jersey or moment or, you know, just applause from the fans of saying like, thank you for your great career. And I think, you know, last week we get him in the Fairy Altercation sketch popping up and talking about buying a boat with Pete. This time we get him with Cecily. I think he's sort of like hitting all of the moments in his career. Like I do wonder if there is a bigger goodbye for him this weekend. Do we get Leslie Jones at the update desk coming in to, you know, as one last time to, you know, talk about her sweet Colin Jost, you know, Sarah making fun of her. And of course the joke swap with Scarlett Johansson and Shay. Like I think that there's something there that's really interesting. I do want to read the Cecily Strong Instagram post that we got today, which was really sweet. She said, best first Mother's Day ever. Baby Strong McGee got to meet so many of the people I love so much, including Colin, Jessica Jost, who wore a parka for their first meeting. On the way over, I said, I bet Jenna is going to cry as stage manager. We ran into my dear friend and longtime stage manager, Jenna, right away as we walked in and all proceeded to cry together. Sarah kept hugging Celeste Yim because she couldn't hug the baby yet. Auntie Erin came by to say hello. That's one of the producers. We met Lauren, who said that she's the future of television. New genius Jane wrote the baby's shoe sketch. I don't know if that was inspired by Cecily's baby, but still. Brian Tucker wrote some amazing jokes for Judge Janine, and he got to yell next to the brilliant James Austin Johnson. So just a huge gift from Marcelo as well, who gave the little baby a fabulous pink dress. Lucky enough to have some beautiful Mother's Days at SNL with her own mom, but this one takes the cake. So hopefully the baby thinks it's cool up until she's 13, 14, 15, 16, when she probably thinks that Cecily's an embarrassing biatch, and then cool again from 17 onwards. Love you, baby girl, and love you, SNL. So really sweet post here from Cecily. Just I know not everyone's on social media, so I wanted to read that out as well. A lot of things to talk about here, Sammy. What did you think of this cold open?
Well, that's an awesome post from Cecily. And I mean, this is something I as I alluded to earlier, I wish I had seen this live because, you know, this is something that did get spoiled for me, you know, Sunday, but it still hit when I watched it. It was great. I feel like the way that this sort of Jost rollout of him leaving, if this is actually happening next week, it's almost like the polar opposite of Cecily leaving, to where it felt like, just from an announcement standpoint, like just getting that, it's like I remember where I was when, you know, dress rehearsal had happened that night, and like Instagram posts started, you know, flying off of like, you know, Cecily, you know, leaving because she had her big goodbye on that show. It was like kind of a shocker because we hadn't gotten the mid-season goodbye in so long. Whereas here, like once Scarlett Johansson was, you know, sort of announced and everything, we're starting to get these sort of breadcrumbs. It really does feel like next week is going to be his last week, which is amazing. I mean, what a run! Obviously sad, but you know, they are, you know, arguably you can make the argument that they're the two of them as a pair, the greatest update anchors of all time. You know, I'm not sure if they're necessarily for me, but yeah. So I mean, overall, just going back to the cold open itself, Great to see Cecily and Jost together. It was interesting to see Janine Pirro in this context. I'm sure she had been in some live sketches before, but I really do associate her at the update desk. So just seeing her be able to play off of JJ's Trump was great. I do feel like structurally this cold open is so interesting because you get sort of like the Mother's Day rug pull, which I did like the reference that JJ has where he's sort of breaking the fourth wall and said like, you know, they couldn't even fly out the real moms for this, because I totally like if had they not said that, I would have just assumed it was the real moms, even though we've seen a couple of them a few times.
It was the real moms.
I don't think it was.
Was it?
It was not. It was not the real moms.
Really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Okay. My bad.
Because he makes the joke that SNL is too cheap to fly them out, and then afterwards, I googled a picture of Marcelo's mom, and it was a different person. So, so that adds to the sketch.
Even I could learn new things on the Roundtable.
Exactly, and that's always great. But yeah, what was interesting though is you do have that sort of middle portion of the sketch where JJ is just firing off Trump, jokes as Trump, which something about this particular one was interesting to me because it something about his delivery, and maybe they just kind of knew they had a strong finish that they're just trying to get to with Cecily and Jost, but it really felt like this was just like pure Trump stand-up. Like I almost wish he had just grabbed the microphone and just started like playing it off like he was a stand-up comedian, because I felt like JJ was even sort of breaking character after firing off some lines and sort of joking to himself. So I don't know, that was something interesting I picked up from this. But what I will remember from this cold open is obviously that sort of moment with Cecily and Jost, and it'll be really funny if next week comes around and like this has kind of all been overplayed by SNL fans and he's on for another 5 seasons, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's so interesting that it wasn't the real moms, because I just assumed that SNL didn't want to like pay for all the moms to come out, so that Bowen and Marcelo and Keenan like flew out their moms. But like this makes a lot more sense. They definitely like dressed like their moms as inspiration, so I get why I maybe thought so. Before we move on from the cold open, we get into some of the sketches here tonight. I just want to point out one line, and I really love when SNL puts a line in a sketch that could have 2 meanings. So they have this line here from Cecily to Colin, and it definitely applies. That's, to Pete Hegseth, but it also could apply from Cecily to Colin Jost.
Oh, I love Pete Hegseth. He's my old drinking buddy.
So saying like, he's my old drinking buddy, like that, obviously there's a lot of, jokes and conversation about Pete Hegseth and alcohol, but also the idea that Cecily and Colin for many years would have drinks at SNL. Like I think that is a very nice way to incorporate that into a sketch. So really fun cold open that we had here to kick off the show. Halle, I'm going to send it over to you for the sketch that you want us to dive into first from this episode.
Yippee! Oh, I get to kick us off. So exciting. Well, it felt crazy in a show with such a long Weekend Update to not pick something from Weekend Update. And it was really the standout of the show to me. I had to go with Mikey Day on Weekend Update as the guy who just walked into a spider web. This is one of, if not my favorite thing we've seen on Update this season. And it was such a, I feel like we don't usually get to see this sort of physical comedy from Mikey. And I love jokes that get all sophisticated and stuff, but I think at the core of everything I find funny, well executed physical comedy is always going to surprise me and gonna be something I keep thinking about as how can something so simple be so funny? And Mikey's ability to just fully commit to that bit. The sound of his skin slapping the floor when he threw himself on the ground shirtless was crazy. And it was just such a different update segment than what we have seen as of late. I think I talked about this on one podcast, but I love on Update just an interesting use of the space. Someone getting up from the desk, walking around. I loved Ego getting up and walking in front of the desk a few weeks back. And this was that. It was just the episode highlight for me. In terms of this season's Update guests, it's right up there with Andrew Dismukes as the bald guy. whenever that was. 1 and 2 on the podium for me this year. Major shout out to Mikey Day for the level of commitment that took.
Well, 1 and 2 for me on the podium, even though I love that bald guy thing that Dismukes did, is, Mikey versus Mikey, where we had him do Lord Gaga in the Lady Gaga episode. And I said after that one that I was like, where has this been? Like, imagine a situation. Like, I can't think of another situation in the history of the show where someone's been on for so long and you feel like you know them so well, and all of a sudden they like pull out this extra skill set that we didn't know was there. Because like Mikey's been to the desk. He used to do that, super centenarian thing and he would come on with other people. He did stuff with Heidi, Nico Slobkin, like all that stuff that they used to do. But like, we haven't seen like Mikey come out alone and just like crush direct to audience. And I wonder if this is, sort of comes from hosting Is It Cake, where he sort of like has this now thing that's his own, where he knows how to like work the camera and work the room in a way that he didn't. So it's fascinating to me, Sammy, to see somebody so late in their career find that extra gear. How did you feel about what we saw from him on Update? You're just muted. Let me just make sure we get you, Sammy.
Yeah. I absolutely love this. I feel like this was more of an old school type of update piece in the sense that like it was very short, like it was kind of like in and out. You have sort of one idea and you sort of just don't overstay your welcome. And I'd love to know how this played at dress, or sort of what his performance looked like at dress, because it really felt like, based off of Jost and Shay's reactions, that he was maybe holding something back, and he just went like full throttle for this, for the live performance, which I thought was awesome. And, I agree. Like, I do feel like, as a sort of physical comedian, I feel like, from what I've seen of him on like Wild and Out, I feel like he was maybe a little bit more physical on that show than he has been throughout his SNL career. So, it is fascinating from his perspective, sort of being in sketches for a big portion of his career where he's sort of in straight roles, sort of reacting to certain things, and to kind of be, this far into his career and seeing, like you said, some of these additional skill sets is great. I'm glad that he's not just sort of going to, what has worked in the past and is trying new things. So, just a very unique piece at the update desk, and, would love for the show to do more, just kind of atypical stuff there.
Yeah, I mean, I just had this feeling, and I don't know this for sure, but that perhaps the show really would have liked to put the other two correspondents on, and Mikey almost willed this on. I don't know what that means for him and if he will stick around next year. The last time I was at SNL for a regular episode last season, I had a conversation with Mikey in the hallway during, and I just sort of like broached the subject of like how long he would ever want to do this. And he's like, I would do this forever if I could. But I don't know, maybe this is it for Mikey. Is another one to consider as potentially what that story would mean for this week, as like maybe this is something he always wanted to get on and now he finally did. But Zoe, I thought this was really, really fun from what we saw on Mikey on Update. How did you feel about it?
Well, I want to say, stop making me sad. I want everyone to stay around forever. But this was definitely a highlight of the episode for me. Just how physical it was, how dedicated he was to the character, that he was still trying to talk about inflation after he had just like taken his shirt off and killed a spider. And then also when he screamed out, "It's on my skin, it's on my skin." I was like, that's so real. That's how I feel about spiders. So I just thought that was hilarious. And I love how timeless it was. It'll be funny now. It'll be funny forever. And it would have been funny like 25 years ago. So I thought it was great.
Yes. I also hate walking into a spider web. Like, I'm sure nobody likes it, but like I am a lot that I don't like flop on the ground, but I'm like, I'm just like trying to figure out where it is. It's very frustrating. But I thought it was good. It was very reminiscent to me. We were talking about on Saturday a little bit about like, is this like Chevy-ish? Is it Belushi like? Like, I think that this is something that you just don't get that physicality on the desk very often. So for him to bring that, I thought was great. There's an amazing photo that I think it's from Ego Wodem's dresser that he always posts like some really good stuff on Instagram every week. And I hope I'm crediting it to the right person, but I just saw this photo of Mikey Day just walking out shirtless into the hallway, just with his like hand up in the air, and just this triumphant moment of what he just pulled off. And for me, probably my highlight of the night. Like, it was just a really great moment. So great job, Halle, kicking us off with that. Sammy, where do you want to take us next?
Yes, I want to talk about my favorite live sketch. Actually, my favorite sketch in general of the evening was the Mother's Day brunch sketch. When I heard Walton Goggins was hosting the show, this is the type of character, the type of performance, the type of use of him that I was expecting to get throughout the whole episode. And I feel like we unfortunately didn't get that as much. But I just thought that this was sort of the perfect character for the type of thing that he does. It reminded me a lot of sort of the elements of his character from Vice Principals, sort of flirty character. And for me, also the levels that this went as far as the grossness in the sexual humor to me felt almost like something you get from like the 90s of SNL. Like, they really, I felt like, went to places with the actual language and the sort of the way your mind is going, and the way that he's sort of just being so heavy-handed with what he's saying to the moms is great. A couple things that I wrote down here. Just the bit that he said about, you had 9 months inside your mama and I'm just trying to get 20 minutes. Like, that is like pure great Walton Goggins performance. And then he has the one comment about Sarah Sherman not wanting to get gassy and saying how he wants like a breeze through his hair, like just like absolutely disgusting stuff. And I think Mikey and Dismukes are reacting off it great. I think Sarah, especially as that mom character, was really great as well. So yeah, I just think this was, for me, the best use of Walton Goggins in the episode. So yeah, I thought this was just really, really great.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta shout out the writers on this one because I felt like this really worked for me as well. I felt like it was a great combination of some really solid writing and then Walton taking it over the top. Like, not a lot of hosts can handle this, and it's why I said that I felt like he may be our best rookie host of the season. So we'll put a pin in that and talk about that towards the end of the show. But the lines here were so good. You mentioned the 9 months thing. I mean, this one,
just because your mama bakes you doesn't mean other men don't want to see the oven.
Really just gives you paints a perfect picture. But I think it was really interesting, the dynamic here where it sort of didn't escalate in a way. Like, it sort of just stayed exactly like, as soon as the sketch was built out, you knew exactly what it was going to be for the rest of it. And you're basically, when you have a premise like that, you're just waiting for the performance or the lines to continue to win you over, or it will die. And I think that he did a really good job maintaining the momentum that he built early on in this sketch. Zoe, how did you feel about our Mother's Day brunch?
Well, it made me squirm. I didn't love it. But I do agree with Sammy that it was a great use of the host. That's what you would expect from Walton, just with his like public persona. And I also thought he was the most comfortable of the night in that sketch. It really just suited him. My favorite part was when he drew the heart on the glass. I just thought that was so funny and it was kind of adorable. And I also like how it didn't escalate to like crazy, like no one was flying out of there. Like, sometimes sketches will just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then there'll be like an ad for something, like nobody was making out. But I did get stuck on like, who were those boys to each other? Are they cousins? Are they brothers? Like, I wanted to know why those 4 people were at brunch. That's something I got stuck on watching that sketch.
Well, that's an interesting sort of like breakdown of the sketch, Zoe, which is, does this sketch work even better if it's one son and one mother? Because then it's really like this direct thing where he's flirting with the person's mom, and you could sort of see like the flop sweat on Mikey. Did we need to have Andrew and Heidi there? Could it have just been Mikey and Sarah? Because does the desperation of the sons to stop the conversation lose its effect a little bit by a larger table? So that's one of those considerations where you start to think about the potential or the ceiling of this sketch. Halle, what did you think of that point and the sketch overall?
Part of what made this sketch work so well for me is that even with like the two sons and the two moms, like you have a solid handful of cast members there, but they still like even with the four of them, really let Walton be in the driver's seat for that whole sketch. He was kind of leading the sketch, and they were very complimentary to him. I feel like a lot of times there will be a host who's like really into a sketch and really committing to it, and it's still kind of like an up and down with the cast, like it's really going back and forth. There's like an even power level, but Walton was really just like in the driver's seat with foot full flat on the accelerator the whole time. So it didn't bother me having the two sets of son and mom, because I feel like they were pulled back enough that it didn't take away from Walton, for me at least. And this was just like a perfect Walton sketch. From the little that I knew about Walton going into it, I was like, this is exactly what I would expect him to be doing. Just from the monologue and the bits and pieces I had seen of him beforehand, I was like, this is his element, I think. And like everyone said, keeping it grounded and keeping it from getting too insane. Like he was just saying these really obscene things, the like tiny little steps of escalation, like him coming out with his shirt fully unbuttoned, like that. Just even though it was such a small thing, it was a lot funnier to me than if they had gone insane and like started making out on the brunch table or something. So it was like the combination of it being so grounded and Walton being so just like powerful as a lead in this sketch made it, I agree with Sammy, my favorite thing outside of update of the night.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. And I asked the question, but I'll answer it now, which is that I do think the sketch is better for the fact that there are more people at the table. And the reason is because it makes you feel that this character of Walton's would do this to any mom, no matter what they look like, no matter who they are, that he is always going to be that same guy.
Y'all making a boy sweat over here.
Yeah, he's always going to be the one that walks up and takes the ice and puts it on his chest because he's just a dog, and that's what we get from learning about this character in just a few minutes. And if it had been more personal with the one-on-one, you may think that it's more about this specific relationship. So I do like those questions and the world building that we could do when we break down the sketch even further. But Walton, to me, why I really did feel like he made this episode a lot better was because he was able to be so just have this like, I keep using the word swagger, I'm looking for a better word, but basically like has the swagger in this sketch, but then in other sketches he could play somebody really weird, or he could be really vulnerable in the monologue. And all of those like different layers of Walton, to me, some of the best hosts to ever do it give you that in an episode. And I think that, I don't know that the episode itself was to the level of some of the greats, but I think as a host, he showed a lot of potential for me. Zoe, let's go over to the sketch that you want us to dive into.
Okay, I want to talk about Tiny Baby Shoe. So this is the sketch where Jane and Heidi are in the park. Jane finds the baby shoe and starts singing a song about finding this baby and becoming this baby's mother. And then it ends up being Walton's shoe, and he has tiny baby feet, and he wants them to start dating, and she doesn't want to start dating. And then Sam Rockwell is there in a cameo and is like, just because you find someone's shoe doesn't mean you automatically are in love with them and everything. I like this sketch because, one, I love a silly song. I thought it was like the elevated version of Jane's update pieces throughout the season, where she doesn't have a piano, but she has like a full musical event of all of her own that she's kind of leading. And then also just talking about like the brunch and even the other sketches we've seen Walton in this episode, just that he could play that little weirdo with tiny feet and all kind of pull it off, but also pull off the brunch sketch shows us like what kind of host and what kind of actor he is. So that's why I kind of wanted to bring that up. Also, it was so weird and it was so early in the night. Like I felt like it's way too early to be seeing tiny CGI feet. Like, where is this night going to take us?
Yeah, and look, I'm glad that you saw the sketch that way. Like, I wish I could have watched this sketch to properly evaluate like the song and the characters and stuff, but I just couldn't get over the fact that like this is Jane Wickline's moment. And it's like, all right, we're finally gonna give her something on the show that she didn't bring over from TikTok, that's like, okay, why did we hire Jane? This is the answer. And then I was able to sort of look and see what was happening here. So I think there's a lot of really fun moments, including the appearance of Sam Rockwell, a great SNL host. If you haven't gone back and watched that episode, please do it. Like, just a great episode. And to see him reunite with Walton Goggins, their White Lotus castmates, I thought was really fun. I think the song itself was certainly interesting. I don't know that anyone will look at Tiny Baby Shoes the same after watching this one. But Halle, what did you think of the sketch and Jane finally having her moment on the show?
I was very happy to see Jane kind of getting that big moment, like you said, because I have loved everything she's done on Update this season. Her songs, always, I watch them and I'm like, what was that? And then 2 days later, I can't stop singing it. And it was the same thing. I have been walking around all day singing Tiny Baby Shoe, which I can't say I saw coming when I watched it for the first time. But I was just really happy to see Jane kind of get her big moment away from the Update desk. Even if it took kind of this whole season to get there, it was worth it. And this, I really appreciated it. I like a sketch that like genuinely surprises me with where it lands. I was kind of like, all right, there's a baby shoe. Where's the baby? We know what's going to happen. And I was like, oh, maybe I don't. Now there's a man with really tiny baby feet. I'm a little lost, but it's working. And I think like Walton was just perfect for this specific sketch. Him like breaking down crying after, I don't remember what she says to him, but she insults something about him. And I thought he just did that so well. Yes, that's what it was. And he just breaks down sobbing. I thought that was played out perfectly. It just took a turn that I liked. Sue me. It's pretty easy to make me laugh if there's stupid CGI involved. Every time it cut to the little feet, it took me out. So I thought that this was a good kind of end of season moment for Jane, and my favorite pre-tape of the episode.
Yeah, it makes you think what kind of, where these characters were born, like probably the same nuclear power plant site as Dunice. So, just to have those tiny limbs. But, I think that for me, beyond the interesting meta nature of Jane, finally having a moment to do something on the show when, the general consensus has been, though, Halle, I know a lot of people like her update pieces, that we just haven't seen her spread her wings at all. I think that for me, this sketch really works at the moment that they finally get to this sort of Cinderella-like story where the shoe is not like, it's funny to an extent to sing around about like something like really random, like picking an object and being like, okay, I'm going to make a song around that object. But when the object has a purpose that whoever finds the shoe is supposed to go date this, I guess, weird guy with baby feet, I think that is the potential for this sketch to be really, really funny. And I think that maybe Walton could have gone even more desperate with it, and that would have made for more awkward tension in this sketch. What do you think, Sammy?
Yeah, I think I'm with you on your takes on this, John. I do feel like for me, it was a slow start and was definitely happy to see Jane in something like this, away from the update desk. I think for me, I've liked some of the stuff she's brought. I've really liked her pairing with Marcella, which I know is not necessarily like a Jane piece, but obviously she's half of that duo, so that is something I've liked from her. But for me, yeah, this sketch really becomes something good when Walton Goggins is in there, and you kind of get that awkward energy from Jane sort of juxtaposed with this just really weird Walton Goggins character. And I think the visual of his character is just very funny. And yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because even though from a meta perspective, she has not had like the most amazing rookie season, I didn't like view this sketch from the lens of like finally Jane is having her moment. I feel like because she's had a lot of moments, even if they weren't just at update.
Really?
I mean, she's had like multiple update appearances, so
yeah, but
I feel
all
like
doing pieces from TikTok that she had before
that. I mean, for sure, but also I do want to give her credit for those pieces with Marcelo as well. Like I do think I think those have been some of my favorite things that update all season, even if she's sort of playing complementary to that as more of a, I guess, ensemble player, but they're a duo, and I think they're a solid update duo. So yeah, I don't know. So I guess I didn't have that expectation on this sketch in particular, but it didn't really feel like such a departure because, yeah, we were getting another song from Jane. If this was like a pre-tape where, we were getting Jane as this like really wacky character, maybe she's the Walton Goggins character, then I'd be, wow, we're really seeing something different from Jane. But for me, this was, almost an extension of what she's done at Update in a sense, maybe just because it's a song. But I'd say I overall did like it. For me, the elements with Goggins bouncing off of her were sort of, the strengths of this one.
Okay, so it's Monday, May 12th. We are just 5 days away from the season finale. We may not know all of the answers to these questions in just a few days, but we have a lot of data to go off of. So I have a big question to ask you. I'm going to hold your feet to the fire in just a minute. I do want to thank our sponsor for the show here tonight. We have a great sponsor, and that is the Sketch School. So I know all of you in the community love sketch comedy. Have you ever thought about writing sketch comedy? Well, if you want to write and you don't know where to start, the Sketch School is here to help. You can join a former head writer from the Second City for a free live online workshop called 2 Essential Tools to Start Writing Sketch Comedy. And it's happening this Saturday, May 17th. And in it, you'll learn the 2 key tools behind writing great sketch. No experience needed. It's totally free, available online globally. And this is the only time it'll be offered this year. You can sign up now at thesketchschool.com. That's thesketchschool.com. All right, let's have some fun. I'm going to ask all of you, does Jane Wickline get a second season on the show? I want these predictions locked in right now. She still has the finale left, but, as a rookie and a lot of storylines coming to the finale, we may not see too much from her next week. So, Halle, will Jane be brought back for season 51?
I'm going to say yes. And my logic here is that I do think there's going to be a decent amount of kind of more senior cast turnover after this season. So I think we're going to be in a period of a decent bit of cast fluctuation. And I think that opens up a bigger window for most of all of the featured players in my brain to stick around. That's my prediction. That's my gut. I could be wrong. I most often am, but I'm locking it in.
Okay. Sammy, is she back?
I actually think she will be, and I think it is for a lot of the same reasons that Halle just said. I do feel like I think obviously we just had a sort of one season wonder last year, but it really feels like those are more rare these days. Maybe COVID impacted some of that. So
is it that rare though? I mean, think about it. Just in the last few, we had Aristotle. We had, Rudnitsky, Luke Null. That was
already a couple of years ago. That was before the podcast started.
Okay, so you're saying since the podcast started, we had Lauren Holt, Aristotle Atari, and then Trost. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I would have to look at
only 3 of the 4 years we've completed in the podcast. Somebody's left out of the first season.
Okay.
That's just horrible numbers.
That is true. I guess I'd have to look at the stats, but I guess just off gut, I feel like she'll be back. I think even if she hasn't fully materialized what they're going for with that type of performer, I think still she, just being, from that sort of Gen Z pool of talent, I think they're going to still want to try to reach that audience. And so I think they're going to give her one more shot.
Zoe, let's lock in your prediction.
I say 100% yes, she will be there next season. Based on vibes alone, I think she's funny, and I'm the audience, so she'll be back.
Okay, we shall see what happens.
What's your prediction? Come on, we're putting your feet to the fire.
I first of all, I don't want. I'm gonna say this. I want to say this, and I have to say this. I don't want anybody to be fired. I think if somebody was going to be removed from the cast, not by choice, I don't understand how Jane isn't the first on that list. I haven't like seen enough from her this season to feel that she's like fully equipped to do 5, 6, 7 seasons. And I think that the standard of excellence for the show has to be like a little bit higher than like, okay, she's really good on TikTok and she could bring that to the update desk, and that she could sort of like maintain her like shy personality and do that opposite of Marcella, who's like a firecracker. Like, I just like, we need to sort of think to ourselves like that getting SNL is like, there's only like 160 people who have ever gotten this show, and a lot of these people go on to become some of the biggest stars in the world. Like, it can't be just that you are popular on another medium and that's good enough to get on the show. Once you're there, you also have to crush. And truth be told, I've seen Emil crush in utility roles, and that's like not even getting started on Ashley, who I think is amazing. So I don't see it, but I really do hope that she can figure that out. And if they give her another chance, I am so rooting for her. Like, don't get me wrong. It's just, I think they're quick on the trigger, and I think she would be the first one to go if you had to pick somebody. All right. Not to bring the mood down, but let's dive. Sammy, did I do okay there? Was it fine? Was that the answer
you did a great job. I'm proud of you.
Yes. All right. Let's keep going. Let's talk about the sketch that I want to dive into. So speaking of weird energy, let's talk about Walton Goggins in this Second Amendment sketch where he just wants to talk about
Guns.
Yeah, as we're going to dive into the First Amendment seems pretty easy, but the Second Amendment, why this? Why guns? And I like this as sort of like the untold story of what really happened with the Founding Fathers, where there was somebody extra there who was just so cool that they put guns in the list of amendments only to die a few minutes later. And because we've never heard of their story, that explains all of the questions that people have about why guns are there. But I just love this sketch, including all of the back and forth with the other people there. I think, there's two things. Number one is, just Walton being that mysterious figure that he can play works so well. The quick answers he was giving to James were fantastic.
Sir, where are you from exactly?
America.
Good breathing
Yes,
room.
but where in America? Which state?
A united one.
Yeah, just like good, really well written, well paced, all that stuff. Again, this is Streeter and PDD. They crushed this. The Mother's Day brunch was also a Streeter sketch. Again, let me just shout out how much I love that guy. And then also, I thought Andrew and Longfellow were so. Andrew Longfellow and Mikey were so funny in this. Just sort of like hyping him up, because I've been in so many rooms where someone's like, "Yo, we should start a bar," and everyone's like, "You should start a bar." Like, like that's the type of thing that the energy was giving here, with Andrew being like,
Can this guy like be on our money? Who is this guy?
and I just like, maybe it just hit me in the right spots. But for me, like, I know this vibe that was going on here where everyone thinks they have the smartest idea when they're all hanging out. So this was, to me, one of the funniest moments for sure of the night, and one of those sketches that I absolutely sent to my friends right after. Halle, what did you think of the Second Amendment sketch?
I liked this. I thought it was strong at the top of the episode. I grew up in Texas, so if you took a look at my like U.S. history classes, this is how they teach you that history went. Basically, everything is just guns. Couldn't tell you anything more than guns. So I was like, wow, this is that's my education was just Matt and his guns. But I liked it because it is kind of crazy. I don't know that I had ever really thought about the Constitution and been like, how did they go from like basic rights to guns so quickly there? But I thought that this was such a simple concept, elevated so much by Walton. Again, like this and the Mother's Day brunch sketch just felt like they were written so well for him specifically, and that energy that he has. I don't know that many other people could have pulled off that like vibe that he brings in this sketch as well as he did. And like you said, John, I think the rest of the cast in that sketch complemented that performance so well. Even I'll applaud James Austin Johnson in this sketch, even though he was kind of the timid, like party pooper one. I thought he did that so well. And in a way that like didn't disrupt the flow of the sketch, and him and Walton going back and forth went perfectly. So I liked this. It was a solid start to the episode. I was a little bit surprised that this was what they chose at the top of the episode because it felt a little bit like the energy slows down a little bit with the back and forth. It was a little bit of a chiller sketch, I'd say. But I appreciated it. It was a nice little bro-y start to the night.
Yeah, I mean, look, like far be it for me to be like, yeah, give me as much bro energy as we can. But it's just like it's because we don't get this very often. Like we got it a lot in the Shane Gillis episode, but there's not like a lot of bro energy in the cast. So whenever we do get it, it does feel pretty refreshing to me. And speaking of James, gotta shout him out here because the guy, fighting through an injury where at some point during this sketch, he's wearing some heels and ankle turns, and he was in crutches during the good nights. And we did report this on Saturday towards the end of the Hot Take Show, where he basically said he hurt himself during the sketch. So just something to watch out for because I believe this is the first notable injury that we've had in an SNL sketch. And I know this wasn't as easy to see on camera as maybe ones in the past, but since Leslie Jones tore her ACL in 2016 doing a Shanice Goodwin ninja sketch, obviously very famously, Chris Kattan hurt his neck. He had Chevy falling at the podium. There's a lot of them over the year, but this one for me, it's always interesting when some extracurricular activity does occur. But wishing the best, obviously, to James, and hope he's feeling all right. Sammy, what did you think of our Second Amendment sketch that we had here to top the show?
Well, don't forget, sketch comedy is a contact sport, so stay safe out there. I really like this sketch as well. It is like interesting in an era where probably some of the most famous, well-liked sketches are the Washington's Dream sketches, where you're taking the founding fathers and sort of commenting on, something that is, a foundation of America, or something that, becomes, so sort of universal, and then sort of, poking fun of that. But this is like a totally different angle here, where you're sort of peeling back the layer of history and saying, well, actually, the reason why it's like this is because of this guy, and this guy is Matt. And it's a Walton Goggins character who is, so well formed and so specific and unique, and really feels like if you were to look back at a lot of the other hosts this season, it'd be hard to see somebody sort of take this character and do it as well as him. It really feels like written for him, which I like. I think Dismukes for me, it was such a highlight here, the way he is like sort of immediately won over by this guy and is just really hyping up the crowd. I thought that was all great. I think the only thing that was kind of holding me back from picking this is like what I wanted to talk about is, I know it's hard to end a sketch, but it did feel very sudden the way that JJ, finally turns and is like on his side. And if you're going to do that, then, end it there. But then they have to sort of put a hat on the hat and do the Breakfast Club homage there at the end. So, again, hard to end the sketch, but still very, very solid for me.
I only like the ending in the idea that this is the reason why we never heard of Matt, because he died a few minutes later. Otherwise, the history books would have recorded Matt's influence on the amendments. So I didn't mind that. Of course, the freeze frame was like maybe a little unnecessary, but I understand, the conversation at least. Zoe, what did you think of our Second Amendment sketch?
I liked it. I loved seeing Andrew and Mikey and Longfellow as like the fanboys, and just like thinking, because like I love history, and so knowing that after the Revolutionary War, it was a real fear of not having guns because of like governments coming in and like overtaking your land and stuff like that, but how we've come so far in history that now we think of like guns as like this bro-y thing that people are just like, guns, I love guns. So I thought that was funny how we could make light of it that way. And also I really did think of Nate Bargatze the whole time. I was like, this is just Nate Bargatze, but it's spinned, and it's a Walton Goggins version, and I thought he was well fit for that role.
Yeah, I totally agree. So fun stuff here from Walton Goggins to start the show. Let's do some rapid fire and go around the roundtable and talk about anything else from this episode that we want to discuss. So Halle, was there anything else that you saw from season 50, episode 19 that you would like to bring up?
Not even necessarily like the content of the update appearance itself, but Marcelo having another recurring character bit felt very significant. I feel like this season he's been on fire with those. And it really does feel like watching, even though the movie guy, while I loved it on Update, it was very much overshadowed by Mikey for me. I came out of it being like Mikey, and then whatever else happened out there. That was crazy. But it is just crazy to continue watching what feels like a massive moment for Marcelo Hernandez, and moments a lot. It's kind of been building for what feels like since he started. But just another accomplishment there. It's been a huge season for him with Domingo, and the couple that you can't believe is together. I just am continuously astonished at how popular he's getting, and how people are responding to him on the show. I've been calling it since day one, I will say, but it's just really cool to watch unfold in real time.
What is the like younger person report on Marcelo? I know
He's our
I don't know.
guy.
Is he? Yeah, like is
You're
Zoe, what
asking
do
me,
you think?
right?
Not you, Zoe. Like, how do the young people feel about Marcelo?
We love him. My friends who don't watch SNL know him, so we love him. He's a
Okay.
cutie pie. We want to
Yeah,
keep
that's
him.
what I figured is happening here. It's sort of like that, Pete effect, Jimmy effect, like that type of thing. I am actually I would consider myself a Marcelo Hernandez defender. I don't love this character though. I think that this takes all of the potentially dangerous qualities of Marcelo Hernandez's performance gone too far and putting them in a character. Whereas a toned down version of these things that he brings to the movie guy, I think work a lot better in sketch form. So for me, like, it's interesting to compare this to his Update performance with Jane Wickline, where he is the over the top, just like aggressive boyfriend. And that for me just hits so hard. But when he's like sort of forcing himself into mispronouncing words and just being like Tasmanian devil all the time, I don't know that it works through the lens of this character. And that's where I'm struggling a little bit. I know that's who he is as a person. I've seen it in real life. But I just think like for him to be at the pinnacle of what they want him to be, I think he has to know when to tone it down a touch. So that's just an interesting conversation. Obviously, I'm very excited for him and his year. And it's always interesting to hear how much people do love Marcelo, me included. Sammy, anything else you want to bring up or comment on?
I don't love to be negative on this show, but I do want to say that this was the first of the SNL midnight matinees that did not work for me. But I want them to keep doing them, and I support Dan Bula's efforts. And I thought like there was like a very interesting premise here, just the idea of like thinking about your boss on the toilet. Like I think there was something to mine there, but the way it went was just an interesting turn that didn't fully work for me. But again, I think they should keep trying these because I like different types of recurring pre-tapes.
Yeah, good point. I mean, I think, we could sort of close the book on the midnight matinees for this season now that the expectation is we're not going to see one. So we got the My Best Friend's House from Ariana Grande. We got the Beppo one from the Mulaney episode, and then Pip from Lady Gaga, followed by the Boss's Bathroom Squatty Potty one this time. I think for me, this one was the least interesting of all of them. Like, I think the idea of doing a pre-tape on about a squatty potty and wondering why your boss has it or thinking about your boss going to the bathroom, as Sammy said, I think is like a very interesting place to mine comedy from. But it didn't have to be a midnight matinee. And I think that what makes the midnight matinee so interesting as like a good extra storyline from the season is like the like interesting characters that they create, like the Pips, the Beppos, and even the one with Kate McKinnon, like last season. I think that those are the ones that I think really work for me here. I don't know that like just because it was visually beautiful to go back and picture Walton Goggins and Sarah Sherman as cavemen going to the bathroom was enough for me to be like, okay, this is a signature midnight matinee that we always get. Zoe, what did you think of that one?
I didn't like it. And I didn't understand why they were cavemen. I usually like the midnight matinee ones. I really enjoyed Pip in the best friend's house, but I don't know. I don't like potty humor. That's just me. That's my problem.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I don't mind it, but to me, it wasn't really about. I guess it was with with Andrew seeing like the number two and then like picturing and stuff like that, and then like thinking of all of the things to go back to. But for me, like the fascination with the squatty potty is something that I think is also very interesting. I just don't know that it fully came together in the way that I wanted it to. I see Shaq Black was asking in the chat, asking about if this was a last minute audible. So this was scheduled for the show. There was also a couple of cut pieces that were cut for time that they didn't get into the show. One of them was this bullying assembly sketch. I talked about it on the Hot Take show. That was cut for time, and it did feature James in it. So again, wondering if James's injury potentially could have affected that getting into the show is something. There was also a sketch called Doll Pitch / Amazing Anna, and that one was also cut for time. So we had 2 live sketches that were slotted into the show. They ended up going with a pre-tape to end the night. So would have been curious about how that was materialized if they went in a different direction. So anything else from your rapid fire that you would like to bring up?
I just want to bring up Heidi's update piece. She's a masterclass. She's an expert, but even just the simple movements of her hand, like every time she mentioned a different story, she was touching her ring finger and holding her hand up the same way. So I just think she's an expert at creating characters, and I think she pulled off another one.
Yeah, totally agree. Heidi, fantastic always on the update desk. And, I just mentioned the nuances that I see from her characters. They don't go unnoticed. And I'm glad that they gave this another shot after it being cut last week from the desk. So good job from Heidi Gardner. For me, yeah, this was just a fun episode. I don't know that I have anything quickly for rapid fire to bring up. I will say, completely boofed and missed the opportunity before to say Jane Wickline next week for your episode.
It might be your last.
Just wish I would have found a way to do that earlier, but
You got there.
I got there. I found it. I remembered before the end of the show. So yeah, this was definitely an interesting one to talk about. I do want to ask you, as we wrap the season on the 5 rookie hosts, my hot take on Saturday, or my headline, was that Walton Goggins was the best rookie host of the season. So there were 4 others: Gene Smart, Charlie XCX, Paul Mescal, and Mikey Madison. Halle, was Walton the best rookie host this season?
I can agree with that. Out of that list, I think that all of the rookie hosts definitely did their part, and they all, came in and made it their own. But there was just some sort of comfortability that Walton brought. He didn't seem like he was out of his element at all. He was really felt very laid back, and he just was. It felt like his sketches were written for him to execute perfectly. They really were attuned to his strengths and his kind of vibe, his aura, as the young folks call it, apparently. So I think the combination of just how comfortable he felt and kind of how easily he went into those over the top moments with the kind of hand, the hand that they dealt him was very well suited to him, I thought. So I agree with that.
Sammy, what do you think?
Yeah, if you had given me that list of names on a note card going into the season, you're like, hey, these are going to be the 5 rookie hosts for SNL season 50. I would have circled, starred, highlighted Walton Goggins as all right, this is the guy who's going to deliver from all of these and be the best host. I want to shout out Charlie XCX, because I feel like going into that episode, people had very low expectations for her, and it could just be a matter of low expectations. But I think she was a really solid host as someone who has not done a lot of acting. Versus for me, Walton Goggins, I had extremely high expectations just because what I know he's capable of doing. So special shout out to her. But yeah, I think I agree that Walton Goggins definitely the best rookie host of the season.
Yeah, we put out a stat today that season 50 is tied for the fewest rookie hosts in an SNL season ever. And the only competitor to that was season 45, where there was 5 in 18 episodes. And obviously, due to COVID, we didn't get to see the rest of that season. And the assumption would have been that there would be more there. So this would have been, as you would have expected coming into to SNL season 50, a lot of returning hosts. This would have been for sure the season with the fewest rookie hosts. Zoe, do you think Walton was the best of them?
Well, I love to agree, so I'm going to say yes. There were moments in the Charlie XCX episode and the Paul Mescal episode even that I personally loved more than moments in this one, but I think his ability to participate in a sketch and carry a sketch, I think Walton was the best of that list.
So let's see if Walton is the MVP of this episode as we talk through the different options here from season 50, episode 19. So Walton Goggins in 7 sketches. We got to see an appearance from Sam Rockwell. I crossed the mothers off this list as they are not real mothers. We had Arcade Fire returning to perform for a couple of performances. I want a fun note, whether you consider this fun or not, but this is a deep analytic stat. But the Arcade Fire is the musical guest that has appeared in the most amount of SNL segments, the 5th most amount of SNL segments to have never hosted the show. So just to clarify what that means that there's musical guests that have hosted the show before, a la Paul Simon, so I don't count those on the list. But the top 5 musical guests who have appeared in the most segments in the history of the show who have never hosted include Dave Grohl, Paul McCartney, Chris Martin, James Taylor, and then Arcade Fire, Win Butler as well. So, obviously very interesting how prolific they are, and that we didn't really talk about it, but in SNL 50, when we're thinking about musical guests who have been a big part of SNL history, I think you have to include Arcade Fire in there. So 2 performances from them. Heidi Gardner led the night with 5 sketches. We had 4 sketches from Bowen, and then 3 from Keenan, Mikey, Dismukes, and then 2 in a voiceover for James. He did that button voiceover in the dog sketch. Sarah Sherman, Marcello, and Michael Longfellow all had 2 sketches. Ego Wodem in 1 sketch. We got shutouts from Chloe Feynman and Devin Walker. Colin Jost appeared in the cold open and on Update along with Che. For the rookies, Ashley Padilla led the night. 3 sketches from her, Jane in 2, and Emil in just 1 sketch from this episode. So Halle, who do you think the top 3 MVP vote getters were for week number 19 of season 50?
All right, I'm locking in my answers. I think it's going to be Walton Goggins. I think I'm going to go with Mikey Day. Maybe that's wishful thinking, but I hope he got a lot of votes. And I'm going to say, I can say Cecily, right?
Of course you can. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to say Cecily. I feel like maybe she got a lot of the sentimental vote.
Yeah, that's a good one. I didn't even read her name off the list, but of course you could say Cecily. Yeah. Sammy, who is your top 3?
I had that exact same list written down. Should I pick somebody else?
No, that's good. No, you feeling
all
it?
right? Yeah, I'm sticking with it. We got the right picks. Me and Halle. We got Walton Goggins, Mikey Day, and Cecily Strong. Although this is like a weird one for some reason. This episode, just the way it went, this was like kind of hard for me to sort of crack that chestnut. But I think Cecily Strong is going to take the 3rd spot.
All right, Zoe, what do you think?
I'm going to say Cecily, Walton, and Colin.
Okay, Cecily, Walton, and Colin. So some good choices there. So Cecily Strong did not make the top 5, unfortunately, but it was great to see her back. But Mikey Day was the number 1 pick here. So good job, Halle. Mikey Day, 34% of the vote. I know you said he would be second, but people loved Mikey this week on Weekend Update, and I think well-deserved here to get the MVP for his performance. In and out, but still, great job from Mikey Day. We had Walton Goggins, our host, at 20% of the vote. Jane Wickline comes in 3rd at 13%. So interesting to see how that affects the perception of her going into the finale. Colin Jost, 9% of the vote. And that should not be Mikey Day, 8%. Sorry, Mikey Day is not the 5th one. I'm trying to see if I can get the stats very quickly while we were live. That should be Heidi Gardner was in 5th place there. So Heidi Gardner with 8% of the vote. So Mikey, Walton, Jane, Colin, and Heidi were the top 5 from week number 19 of season 50. All right. We did it. We made it to our finale show for season 50. We started the year with all of these hopes and expectations for what the biggest season in SNL history would be. And now we are here at the finale to talk through Scarlett Johansson hosting for the 7th time with music from Bad Bunny, Scarlett will become the woman in the entire history of the show to host the most when she comes for her 7th time to host. This could be a goodbye for Colin Jost as much as, any other cast member. I mean, really, we don't know anything's on the table. So there's a lot to think about for this monster episode of Saturday Night Live we are expecting on the weekend. Halle, what are your thoughts and expectations?
I am feeling very sentimental about it. The number of times I've said the word sentimental on this podcast is extravagant. But like I said, I'm a very sentimental SNL watcher. I love my cast members. I get attached to them. I watch these people week after week. I track their screen time through you guys. Like, I am so invested in these individual cast members. But at the same time, I'm kind of getting ready to see what's next in the SNL circle of life, kind of. Looking back, there's cast members that I've been so sad to see them go. But then the next couple seasons after them brought in some of my favorite all-time cast members. It really is kind of a circle of life. So I'm expecting there to be some goodbyes, probably some more evident than others. I know in the past we've had finales where there's like a whole goodbye for someone and then someone else will quietly depart over the summer. But I'm bracing myself for those goodbyes, but I'm really excited to see how it all wraps up this big season 50. I'm trying to let go of whoever's leaving without being too sad. Thinking about it, like some of my favorite cast members ever leaving, like the departure of Beck Bennett came right before the arrival of James Austin Johnson. It's a circle of life for Halle's favorites. So I'm just trying to go in with excitement. And I do hope that if there are cast members leaving, especially some of the more senior ones, I hope it's a good little finale for all of them.
I mean, I think that's really great. I mean, just to think about, the truth is that turnover really does, create new opportunities and build new stars. So, that could potentially be a major storyline coming out of this weekend. Sammy, when we first started podcasting together all the way back in 2020, I kid you not, some of the conversations we were having were about why would somebody leave now in season 46 when you could wait until season 50 and be there for the biggest season ever. And we said the same thing in 47, in 48, and 49, because we knew how big of a moment, how many eyeballs, how many people after decades would return to the show. That is all going to end on Saturday night. So for you, what will this episode be? The expectations, Scarlett Johansson coming in. Tell me all of your thoughts.
So many thoughts and such a great way to tee that up because, I mean, I think COVID played such a big part of that. I mean, that's obviously, who knows if COVID never happened, would some of these cast members still be on the show? Would this podcast even exist? There's so many questions, probably not. Exactly. So, I think as far as a booking perspective, so excited to see Scarlett Johansson back. I know, again, we've speculated for weeks since then that could this signal that Jost is leaving. I mean, she has a big movie coming out this summer she has to promote. She's a friend of the show. I do think, though, based off of the last couple of weeks, that this might be the end, which is really crazy because Jost and Shay started, on Weekend Update when I was like a sophomore in college. So it's crazy. It's been quite the ride. And Weekend Update is something that, in earlier eras of the show had shorter tenures. People would come in and host for a year and then leave. But this has been such a run for them. So, if this is the end, what a run it's been. And then just going back to Scarlett Johansson in general, it's cool now that we're getting, I think for a long time, we had so many people start to join the 5-timers club and they're kind of get that jacket and then, we never see them again. It's cool to start seeing with Mulaney and ScarJo, we're getting, the 7-timers, the 6-timers. Like I want to get more of those people, who have gotten to those levels of achievement as hosts on the show, like the Christopher Walkens and the John Gimmons and the Tom Hanks, because you can really see, someone like Scarlett Johansson was a host in the early 2000s and now it's the mid 2020s. So as far as SNL as a time capsule, just cool to see somebody like that come back. But Yeah, this has been such a dense season between the election and SNL 50 and just everything going on in the world. So in some ways, I'm looking forward to closing the book on it. Obviously sad, but it's been a great run, and I'm excited to see them bring it all home.
You're so right. And I mean, in January 2006, when Scarlett Johansson hosted for the first time, Colin Jost was in his first season as a writer and actually wrote 2 sketches that got on that episode. So their story goes all the way back to then, even though they weren't dating until many years later. Still, this is an interesting moment, I think, from a meta SNL hosting perspective. Could eventually 10 timers be the new 5 timers? I think that's something to consider. Or this may be one of those situations where Scarlett says, you know what, I've hosted the show so many times. I'm good. I don't need to host again. And I'm only going to come back for Colin's last episode. So that may be what we see on Saturday. Zoe, what do you think?
I'm excited to see Scarlett. I just watched her co-host Jenna and Friends on the Today Show, so I have a really strong parasocial relationship with her right now, and I feel so proud of her. I feel like I know her. I saw her every day, so I'm excited to see her host SNL. I'm sad that Colin might be leaving. I really don't like change at all as even a concept. So getting excited about what the future might look like for SNL is, I keep saying SOL because what the future might look like for SNL. I can't even picture
what
it.
Is SOL?
Okay, SOL are the standards of learning for Virginia, and my students just took them for the past 2 weeks, so that's why they're on the top of mind. That's what SOL is. But I can't even conceptualize the future of SNL changing so drastically, especially after just loving the season so much, because I felt like the ads and like everything on my TV was always saturated in SNL, so I can't even imagine it being different.
Look, these are the moments that we live for as SNL fans where the history books are made. Like right now, we don't know what's going to happen. And forever, what happens in season 50, episode 20, we will talk about in terms of how the show moves forward in the post SNL 50 world. So it's going to be a lot of fun to cover the episode on Saturday. Obviously, we will be there all week long to talk through all of the major storylines. And if you're ever going to stay up for a hot take show, I think Saturday night is the night to do it, so we can break down everything we see. Before we get there, we have a great SNL by the numbers on the horizon with Mike ready to go with some great stats for you on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. We will also have our patron show for all of our patrons, where the poll is up now to vote, patreon.com/the SNL network. And of course, we'll talk about all of the things we have planned for the off season once we get through the Saturday show. But we do have a great countdown series we're planning for the summer. We are also recording a couple episodes of SNL Stories, working on new Everything You Need to Know. So the channel isn't going away. We will still have plenty of opportunities to talk about events that happen, stories that happen over the summer as we look ahead to season 51. So going to be a great time to cover this finale and then go through the summer and head into this next season. Halle, thank you so much for joining us. Kat was very well behaved tonight, so appreciate you and your cat. So please tell the listeners anything you would like as we wrap up our show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jon. It has been so awesome to get to podcast with you guys for season 50. That's insane. I cannot believe that we're wrapping it up. That just sounds crazy to say. But I don't really have any socials to plug for myself. But everyone, if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, it's the best podcast in the world. It's been an honor to be a part of it for season 50. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens this weekend.
Yeah, very excited, Halle. And I told the story the first time you joined us for a roundtable at the start of the season, but I'll just say it once again. Halle was the first intern producer that we ever had here at the SNL network when it was called that, or even maybe SNL Stats Days. You were joining us towards the end of that. I mean, just really, really cool to get you a part of the podcast this season. So I appreciate you a lot. Halle, Sammy, it's been quite the journey. I know we're going to keep talking more throughout the rest of the season and into the off season, but just thank you for joining us here tonight. Anything you would like to plug to the listeners?
Jon, it was a pleasure as always. You guys can find me at that Sammy Kay on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And yeah, like Jon said, we'll have a lot of fun stuff cooking during the off season, probably some drafts. You never know, but yeah, keep checking out the channel and everything we got going on here.
Yeah, and we're testing the waters a little bit behind the scenes of maybe, just maybe, a super fan takeover reunion at some point, getting you guys out of the woodshed to come out and talk about season 50. So that could be a lot of fun for an off-season show. Zoe Walker, always great to get to talk to you about the show. Love the tiny mic that you bring to every episode. Great thoughts here tonight. So thanks for joining us. Anything you would like to say to our listeners?
Well, thank you for having me. Me and my tiny mic love to come. And I just want the listeners to remember to apply their sunscreen in the summer sun and all the summer fun they're going to have.
That's a great note. That's part of the SOL, the standards of learning?
Yes, standards of learning. You have to know all your standards.
Got it. All right. Well, if you would like to follow everything we have going on social media, I think you'll really enjoy it because we have a ton of great posts that are going to be going up all week long in advance of this Scarlett Johansson episode. And then as soon as news breaks, and by the way, if you weren't in the SNL streets in previous years, sometimes the news breaks early. I mean, if we hear something, we're not necessarily going to go out of our way to say it, but there will be other journalists from other mediums who are, try and get their way in there to figure out who's leaving. So these things might come out during the week. And of course, if there's something big or major, we will be here to talk about it. But just keep an eye out of what could happen this weekend. And for now, the best thing to do is to follow us on social media so you never miss any of the important SNL news at the SNL Network, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And you can subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify to never miss any of the episodes we have posting here on the channel. If you don't mind, give us a thumbs up on the video and give us a comment to let us know what you think of the show here tonight. I want to thank our presenting partner for the show here, and that would be our friends over at latenighter.com. And for Halle and Zoe and Sammy for joining us for the show here tonight. Just really great to talk to them and everyone in the chat for joining us here on this Monday night. My name is Jon Schneider from the SNN, and we will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.